September 28, 2025, Marta Haddad interviews Vice President J.D. Vance on Fox News Sunday about the war in Ukraine. A normal Sunday interview until she asks a very specific question about Tomahawk missiles.
In terms of our support for Ukraine,
Tomahawks are American cruise missiles with advanced technology and an impressive range of 1,600 kilometers. Tomahawks. That's enough to hit targets in much of Russia, including Moscow. Zelensky knows this, and that's why he's been begging for them for months. But he was always denied. But this time, J.D. Vance's response was different and revealed something that could change everything.
One of the things I've always said, Marta, is that I wanted the Europeans to step up in a big way. I wanted us, the United States, to stop pouring money and resources into a conflict that was so far away. Because of the leadership, you now have the Europeans buying equipment from the United States instead of us giving it to them. And you asked that question about Tomahawks. That's something the president is going to do. The final determination about what the president is going to do is what is in the best interest of the United States of America.
We're looking into that. I know we're having conversations right now about it, about the issue. But what nobody realized was that those conversations weren't just about the Tomahawks. 3 days later, the United States made an even more direct decision. A decision that could very well cripple Russia's war machine. And that decision came faster than anyone expected. Just 72 hours after that interview, the bomb dropped. Reuters and the Wall Street Journal published the news simultaneously. October 1st, 2025. The headline was clear. The United States had authorized something unprecedented. Its intelligence agencies and the Pentagon were authorized to provide information to Ukraine, not just any information. Accurate data on energy infrastructure targets inside Russia. Oil refineries, pipelines, power plants, targets located far beyond the border with Ukraine. For the first time since the start of the war, the United States will officially help Ukraine destroy targets in the heart of Russian territory. But to understand why this decision is so devastating, you need to see what Ukraine was already managing to do on its own. Since August 2025, Ukrainian forces have drastically intensified their attacks against Russian refineries. Between August 1st and September 19th, at least 21 different attacks. Some facilities were hit 2 or even 3 times. Ukraine was using its own long-range drones, manufactured in the country itself. And the range was impressive. Ukrainian drones hit targets more than 1,100 kilometers from the border. Ukraine used its own technology to strike Russia's industrial core, targeting specific sites. In September, Ukraine forced the closure of the country's 2 largest refineries. At the beginning of October, 21 out of 38 major Russian refineries had been hit. More than half of the strategic refineries were under Ukrainian attack. The impact was devastating. By the end of September, several energy analysis agencies had reached the same number. Between 30 and 8 and 40% of all of Russia's oil refining capacity was out of operation. One of these agencies, Ciala, was quite specific. Ukrainian drone attacks directly caused 70% of these shutdowns. President Zelensky called these attacks the most effective sanctions. In other words, Ukraine invented its own way to economically punish Russia, and they felt every blow. The lack of refining capacity created a cascading fuel crisis. The Russian domestic market was 20% below demand. Huge lines formed at gas stations all over the country. More than 100 cars waiting. Drivers lining up all night long. The crisis spread from the Far East to central Russia. Even the country's sixth largest city started to suffer from shortages. Since May, more than 300 independent gas stations have been forced to close. Those that remained open had to ration. Filling jerry cans was prohibited. In occupied Crimea, the authorities formally imposed a limit of 20 liters per person and set price caps. Russian government propaganda tried to maintain the narrative of control, but even the most fervent nationalists could no longer deny it. Maxim Kalashnikov, a well-known propagandist, admitted, "The situation is deteriorating. The fuel crisis is developing." The voices calling for Soviet-style rationing are getting louder and louder. Stop and think.
The military are gone. Philosophers are on the attack. Even our wounded and unfortunate are being sent to the front. This is a serious problem. Now the struggle is for the coldness of war. It's clear that Moscow won't win and sees that it can't win. Now somehow everyone is talking.
Even the propagandists start talking about rationing. You know the problem is serious. But the fuel crisis was just a symptom of something bigger. The Ukrainian commander-in-chief confirmed, saying, "This is a fuel crisis in Russia, which directly affects the logistics and supply of their army." The lack of fuel was hurting Russia's ability to move troops and transport supplies. Ukraine was attacking Russia's very ability to keep fighting. And the Russian government, well, they're starting to panic. And the desperate measures they're taking prove it. First, the ultimate irony. Russia is one of the largest oil producers in the world. It extracts oil from the ground, but it can no longer turn that oil into gasoline because its refineries are destroyed. So, the Russian government started getting ready to do something absurd: import ready-made gasoline from China and South Korea. According to the Russian government, it is considering bringing back a chemical additive called monomethylaniline. This additive is used to increase the octane rating of gasoline, making it more efficient. But it was banned in 2016 because it is toxic and severely pollutes the air. The Russian government was so desperate that it was willing to poison the very air its citizens breathe just to make the little gasoline they still produce last longer. Third, Russia ramped up fuel purchases from Belarus, its neighboring ally. Imports skyrocketed by 300%. They tripled. Russia was literally buying from all sides to try to make up for the domestic shortage. Wait, it could still get worse. Why did the hole in the Russian government's accounts between January and July reach $61.1 billion? To cover that, they proposed raising taxes. And there's something that few people know. But before the 2022 invasion, the Russian government spent more on health and education than on the military. Now, war spending is 1.5 times greater than everything combined in medicine, education, culture, and sports. Russia is literally sacrificing its hospitals and schools to pay for the war. And the Russian people are starting to feel the real cost of this conflict. It was at that moment that Donald Trump completely changed his stance. Since January, Donald Trump had prioritized diplomacy. He wanted a quick deal. He suggested that Ukraine give up territories to Russia in exchange for peace. But Russia intensified attacks against Ukrainian cities and refused to reduce its demands. Trump, according to official sources, became increasingly irritated. And on September 23rd, Trump posted something explosive on Truth Social. He said Ukraine, backed by Europe, could reclaim everything. And he called Russia a paper tiger. The message was clear. Russia seemed strong, but inside, it was weak. Trump had changed his strategy. from trying to negotiate to applying maximum pressure. And 3 days later came the decision to share intelligence. Let me explain to you what that really means. Ukraine had already proven that it could cause massive damage on its own. 38% of refining capacity was out of operation. Now, imagine with American intelligence. The United States has the most sophisticated intelligence network in the world. Satellites, spies, communications interception, real-time analysis. This intelligence will turn the Ukrainian campaign from highly effective to absolutely devastating. Ukraine will receive precise data on when and where to strike to cause maximum damage. Which refineries are operating above capacity? Where are Russian air defenses weakest? Timings, ideal attack windows, vulnerabilities, everything.
Trump, Ukraine, a change game. Ukraine is change. Ukraine, and I think he's closer to the situation now. And that's why. And between us, only Trump can. For today, we know about players from around the world who are not players of, but he's closer to that.
The United States is also pressuring NATO allies to do the same. Ukraine may be about to receive a tsunami of information from multiple sources, and Russia was already struggling to defend itself. Now it will face American intelligence and possibly that of all NATO. And here is the size of the hole that Russia has gotten itself into. The country has thousands of targets over 11 time zones, making full defense impossible. Each air defense system protecting a refinery is a system that's not protecting troops. On the front line, Russia now faces an impossible dilemma. It has to choose between defending its economy or defending its army. It can't do both at the same time. And the worst part? This creates a cycle that keeps getting worse. Less refining means less fuel. Less fuel means more difficult military logistics. Less ability to launch offensives. Less refining also means less export revenue. Less money means less military equipment. A weaker army means less ability to defend refineries. Less defense means more refineries destroyed. The cycle starts again. It's a self-perpetuating spiral, a vicious cycle that Russia can't break. And the situation is about to get even worse, because it's not just the intelligence that's coming in. There's also the issue of missiles. Ukraine is developing its own systems. The Flamingo has a 3,000-kilometer range and a 1,150-kilogram warhead, over twice as large as the American Tomahawk. If produced in quantity, this could hit almost any target in Russia. The Long Neptune, a land-based version of the missile that sank the largest ship in the Russian Black Sea Fleet, has a range of 1,000 kilometers. Mass production takes time. This is where Western systems come in. The Tomahawks mentioned by Vance have a range that can reach up to 2,500 kilometers. They fly low to avoid radars and perform maneuvers to evade them. Speed of over 900 kilometers per hour. Decades of proven use. But the United States is considering something beyond Tomahawks, a cheaper and more scalable alternative. The Barracuda, a missile developed by the American defense company Anduril, has a range of over 900 kilometers. The cost is less than $200,000, a fraction of the price of a Tomahawk. And most importantly, it was specifically designed for mass production. Thousands of units per year. The strategy here isn't surgical precision for every target, it's volume. Constant attacks that Russia simply can't repel or repair fast enough. Germany also announced the removal of restrictions on supplied weapons and promised to help Ukraine develop its own production capacity. Meanwhile, France is working on a new package of sanctions targeting Russian companies. Everything is coordinated with the Trump administration. The Western alliance is consolidating. But then, what does all this mean? The United States has elevated a successful Ukrainian initiative to a central pillar of Western strategy. The goal is not a single knockout, it's constant economic attrition. Gradually reduce refining capacity, disrupt logistics, drain money from the Russian state, erode military capability until it can no longer sustain offensive operations. Everything indicates that Russia will respond by retaliating with brutal attacks against Ukrainian infrastructure. The early October attacks prove that, and there is a risk of escalation if weapons like Tomahawks are supplied. But so far, experts believe that Russia has been restrained by the fear of a direct NATO response.
Harm us, they can. We'll be shooting them down and improving our air defense systems.
Will
this damage our relations with the United States, which are now seeing some light at the end of the tunnel? Of course it will.
But
how could it be otherwise? Using Tomahawks without the direct participation of American military personnel is impossible. This would mark a completely new, qualitatively new stage of escalation, including in relations between Russia and the United States.
You can see the war has reached a new phase. And this phase is not about who has more tanks. It's about who can sustain their war economy for longer. It's about who breaks. First, American intelligence, incoming missiles, potential allies arriving, hardening positions. The balance is tilting. Russia faces an impossible equation. Each destroyed refinery makes it harder to finance the war. Each missing liter makes it harder to move troops. Each ruble spent on internal defenses does not go to the front. It's a cycle that tightens more and more. Russia has few options. It's the decision that can paralyze. The Russian military, not through an epic battle, but through various measures that increasingly reduce the capacity of the Russians to continue fighting until the cost becomes impossible to sustain. And you, what do you think about this? How long do you think Russia can withstand this pressure? Your opinion in the comments? If you liked this content, share it with someone who needs to understand what is really happening in this war. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next analyses. See you next time.